My name is Edward. I'm 35, a professional mountaineer from Oklahoma City. 10 years ago, I married Sharon, a woman who baked the best cakes in the county and could make anyone laugh with her jokes. We were that couple everyone looked at with slight envy. Our house always smelled of vanilla batter and fresh coffee. It seemed like it would be that way forever. But 3 months ago something changed. Sharon started spending hours on her phone, constantly smiling at the screen. When I asked, she'd respond with vague phrases about work or friends. I'm not the type to spy or check up on people, but something in her behavior triggered an alarm I couldn't ignore. One evening while she was in the shower, her phone remained on the kitchen table. I didn't plan to check anything, but a message flashed on the screen. "Can't wait for our trip, darling." The sender, Rudolph. A name I'd heard before. Her best friend from television, the host of a popular morning show. My heart beat faster. I unlocked the phone. I knew the password because we never hid anything from each other. Or so I thought. The messaging revealed a picture I feared. Tender words, future plans, discussions about how they felt together. Months of correspondence I'd missed while living in the illusion of a happy marriage. But that was just the beginning. I decided to check our joint bank accounts. There I found statements that made me hold my breath. Payments to downtown restaurants we'd never visited together, hotel bookings, tickets to Bora. 2 one-way tickets for the following week, and return tickets a week after that. She was planning to leave with him. Without a word. Just disappear. I sat in the kitchen holding the phone, trying to understand how this could have happened. Then I did something I'd never done before. Opened her email. Among the booking confirmation letters I found one that stopped time. A statement from a private clinic. Termination of pregnancy procedure. Date, 2 months ago. My head spun. Pregnancy? Abortion. We hadn't talked about children lately, but I would definitely have known if she were pregnant. If she didn't tell me, it meant the child wasn't mine. This was that moment when I realized there was no going back. The next day I bought a ticket to Bora, flying out a day earlier than them. I downloaded the app where she shared her geolocation with me, a feature we'd enabled once for safety during travels. Now it became my guide into this pain. I arrived on the island, checked into a small hotel near their resort. Waited. The geolocation showed they were already there. The next morning I went to the beach where, according to the phone signal, Sharon was supposed to be. And I saw them. She was lying on a lounge chair in a white swimsuit I'd given her last summer. Rudolph sat nearby, applying sunscreen to her shoulders. They were laughing. Their movements were so natural, as if they'd been together for decades. He leaned down and kissed her temple, as tenderly as I once kissed her myself. I took several photos from a distance. I don't know why. Maybe for evidence in court. Maybe just to convince myself this was reality, not a terrible dream. For the next 3 days I watched them. They ate breakfasts on the terrace overlooking the ocean, swam in the lagoon, danced on the beach under the stars. Every moment I saw caused a mixture of pain and strange calm. The more I watched, the more I understood. They were truly happy. As happy as she and I hadn't been for a long time. I planned revenge. Thought about how to burst into their villa, make a scene, destroy their perfect world just as they destroyed mine. But every time I looked at them, I felt anger gradually changing into something else. Understanding? Acceptance? I don't know. On the 4th day I approached them on the beach. Sharon saw me first. Her face changed from happiness to horror in a second. Rudolph stood up, but I stopped him with a gesture. "I just need to talk," I said quietly. We sat at a table in a beach cafe. I laid out photos, statements, messages before them. Sharon cried, covering her face with her hands. Rudolph held her shoulders but looked at me with a mixture of guilt and defiance. "Tell me the truth." "The whole truth," I requested. And she told me everything. About how they met at a charity event 6 months ago. How they started communicating as friends and then it grew into something more. About the pregnancy that shocked her because she and I hadn't been intimate for a long time. Our lives had diverged, though we didn't acknowledge it aloud. About the abortion she went through because she didn't know how to combine her old life with the new one. "I love you, Edward. But I fell in love with him too. I didn't want to hurt you, but I couldn't give this up either," she whispered through tears. But the biggest shock was waiting for me later. I listened, feeling something inside me break completely. Not from anger, from inevitability. From realizing that our marriage had ended long ago, we just both didn't dare admit it. I returned home the next day. Filed for divorce. The process went smoothly. She didn't claim property, I didn't make scenes. The house remained mine. She took her things and moved to Rudolph's apartments near the studio. The months after the divorce were the hardest in my life. Empty rooms echoed with what once was. I spent more time in the mountains, conquering peaks that never seemed so lonely. Cold air burned my lungs, but the pain from it was clearer, more real than the pain in my soul. And this is only half the story. I tried to move on. Started dating a woman named Jessica I met at a climbing club. She was kind, understanding, patient with my emotional scars. We went on dates, hiked trails together, and slowly I began to feel like maybe I could heal after all. One evening, 3 weeks into our relationship, Jessica invited me to dinner at her apartment. It was supposed to be casual, pasta and wine, nothing fancy. But when I arrived, I noticed something odd. On her bookshelf was a photo frame I recognized. It was the exact same frame Sharon had in our bedroom, with an intricate silver pattern around the edges. I'd bought it for her on our anniversary 5 years ago from a small artisan shop that only made custom pieces. "Where did you get that frame?" I asked, my voice tight. Jessica looked confused. "What frame?" "Oh, that one? My sister gave it to me." "Why? Your sister?" "Yeah, Sharon. You haven't met her yet, but I've told you about her. She's married to this TV guy, Rudolph. They just moved to California." The room spun. Jessica was Sharon's sister. This wasn't a coincidence. This was calculated. Sharon had set me up with her own sister. But why? What happened after that is worth hearing. I confronted Jessica immediately. At first, she denied knowing anything, but eventually the truth came out. Sharon had asked her to accidentally meet me at the climbing club, to befriend me, to report back about how I was doing. Sharon claimed she was worried about me, wanted to make sure I was okay after the divorce. But I knew there was more to it. Sharon always had a reason for everything she did. I cut things off with Jessica that night. Drove home in a daze, my mind racing with questions. Why would Sharon want her sister spying on me? What was she afraid I'd discover? That's when I decided it was time for my own investigation. I contacted a private investigator named Marcus Stone, a former detective who now handled cases like mine. I gave him everything: photos, documents, dates, locations. Within a week, Marcus came back with information that changed everything again. Rudolph wasn't just a TV host. He'd been married twice before. Both marriages ended badly. His first wife, Caroline, had disappeared under mysterious circumstances 15 years ago. Police investigated but found nothing. His second wife, Miranda, filed a restraining order against him before their divorce, claiming emotional manipulation and control. Marcus dug deeper. He found social media posts from women who dated Rudolph, all telling similar stories. He was charming at first, then gradually became controlling, isolating them from friends and family. One woman claimed he'd forged her signature on financial documents. Another said he'd threatened to ruin her career when she tried to leave. This was the man Sharon had chosen. The man she'd betrayed me for. I should have felt vindicated. Should have felt like karma was coming for them. But instead I felt sick. Whatever Sharon had done to me, I couldn't let her walk into danger without warning her. I called her. She answered on the third ring. "Edward." "Sharon, we need to talk. It's about Rudolph." There was a long pause. "I don't think that's a good idea. His first wife disappeared. His second wife got a restraining order. There are women who say he's dangerous. Please, just listen to what I have to say." Another pause, longer this time. Then, "I know. You know? I know about Caroline. I know about Miranda. I know everything, Edward." My blood ran cold. "Then why are you with him?" "Because he's different with me. Because I understand him in a way they never did. Because," she stopped. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "Because he's my brother." The world stopped. "What did you just say?" "Meet me tomorrow. Oakwood Park, noon. I'll explain everything. But Edward, come alone. Don't tell anyone. Not even Marcus Stone." She hung up. I sat in my truck in the driveway, staring at my phone. Brother? How could Rudolph be her brother? Nothing made sense. The final twist in this story surprised even me. The next day, I arrived at Oakwood Park early. It was a cold November morning, the kind where your breath creates clouds in the air. Sharon was already there, sitting on a bench near the pond. She looked different, thinner, tired, with dark circles under her eyes. I sat down next to her, keeping distance between us. "Talk," I said. Sharon took a deep breath. "When I told your mother I wanted to know about your family history last year, she broke down and told me about Rudolph. About how she'd had twin boys but couldn't afford to keep both. How she'd given one up for adoption. How she'd regretted it every day since." "I remember," I said. "You mentioned that conversation once. What I didn't tell you was that I became obsessed with finding him. I hired a detective. It took 4 months, but we found Rudolph. I reached out to him, told him about his birth family. We started talking. And Edward, he was so broken. His adoptive parents were wealthy but cold. They'd controlled every aspect of his life. The TV career, the perfect image, none of it was real. It was all what they wanted him to be. So you fell in love with my brother? I said bitterly. No. Sharon shook her head. That's not what happened. We became close friends. He started confiding in me about his marriages, about his mistakes, about how he'd pushed people away because he'd never learned how to be vulnerable. I was trying to help him, trying to be the family he never had. Then explain the affair. Explain Bora. Explain the pregnancy. Sharon's eyes filled with tears. The affair was fake. The texts, the photos, the trip, all staged. The pregnancy was real, but it was yours, Edward. It was always yours. I stood up, my fists clenched. Don't lie to me. I'm done with lies. I'm not lying. She grabbed my arm. Sit down and let me finish. Please. You won't guess how this all ends. Reluctantly, I sat back down. Sharon pulled out her phone and showed me a video. In it, Rudolph sat in what looked like a therapy office. My name is Rudolph Thompson, he said to the camera. I'm recording this as part of my treatment for dissociative identity disorder. For 15 years, I've struggled with a condition I didn't understand. I created personas to cope with trauma from my childhood. One of those personas believed he was in a relationship with Sharon. He sent messages, made plans, lived a parallel life I wasn't fully aware of. The video continued. A therapist appeared on screen, a woman with gray hair and kind eyes. Rudolph came to me 6 months ago after Sharon noticed inconsistencies in his behavior. Through our work together, we've identified that his condition stems from severe childhood trauma and abandonment issues. The personas he created were his mind's way of protecting him from pain. The video ended. I stared at Sharon. You're telling me this whole affair was in his head? Partially. The messages were real, he sent them during episodes. But we were never physical. We never planned to run away together. The Bora tickets? His persona bought them without him fully realizing what he was doing. When I found out, I confronted him. That's when everything unraveled. And the pregnancy? Sharon's voice broke. That was ours. But I was so scared, Edward. Scared that Rudolph's condition was hereditary. Scared that our child might inherit something broken. I panicked and made the worst decision of my life. I terminated the pregnancy without telling you because I couldn't face what I'd done. Before I continue, please pause the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new interesting stories. Thank you. This was the calmest day before the storm. I felt like I was drowning. Why didn't you just tell me? Because by the time I understood what was happening, you'd already seen the messages. You'd already followed us to Bora. You'd already made up your mind about what I was. And I thought, she sobbed. I thought maybe it was better to let you hate me for cheating than for you to know I'd killed our baby. We sat in silence for a long time. Around us, life continued, joggers passed by, children played, dogs barked. But in our bubble, everything had stopped. Where is Rudolph now? I finally asked. In a residential treatment facility in Colorado. He's been there for 2 months. He's making progress, but it's going to be a long road. And you? Why the charade with Jessica? Sharon looked down at her hands. I asked Jessica to check on you because I was genuinely worried. But also because I was a coward. I couldn't face you directly. When she told me you two were getting close, I should have stopped it. I know that was wrong. I've hurt so many people, Edward. Yes, you have. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I'm not asking for it. I just needed you to know the truth before. She stopped. Before what? Sharon pulled out an envelope from her jacket. I'm moving to Colorado to be near Rudolph's facility. Not as a romantic partner, but as family. He needs someone who understands where he came from. Your mother wants to visit him, but she's too afraid. I'm going to be the bridge. I'm going to help him heal. And you think that makes up for everything? No. Nothing makes up for it. But it's what I need to do. Rudolph is your brother, Edward. He's part of your family even if you never knew him. He's sick, not evil. And he deserves a chance to get better. Don't turn off, it's about to get real. I took the envelope. Inside was a letter written in shaky handwriting. Rudolph's letter. In it, he apologized for the confusion, the pain, the chaos his condition had caused. He wrote about growing up feeling empty, about the personas he'd created to fill the void. About how learning he had a twin brother had given him the first real sense of identity he'd ever known. At the end he wrote, I don't expect to be part of your life. I don't deserve that. But I want you to know that even though we were separated, you were never alone. Somewhere, I was always out there, missing the brother I never knew I had. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. I need time, I told Sharon. Time to process all of this. Time to figure out what I want to do. I understand. But Sharon, don't ever contact me through Jessica or anyone else again. If you want to talk to me, you call me directly. No more games. No more games, she agreed. We parted ways that day. Sharon moved to Colorado the following week. I stayed in Oklahoma City, climbing my mountains, living in my house, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. But the story doesn't end there. 2 months later, I received a call from the treatment facility. Rudolph wanted to meet me. No pressure, no expectations, just an opportunity to talk if I was willing. I thought about it for a week. Part of me wanted to refuse, to keep that door closed forever. But another part, the part that had spent 35 years as an only child, never knowing I had a twin, was curious. I drove to Colorado on a Saturday morning. The facility was beautiful, set in the mountains, surrounded by pine trees and fresh snow. Rudolph was waiting in a common room, looking nervous. We didn't hug. We didn't shake hands. We just sat across from each other, two strangers who shared DNA and nothing else. "Thank you for coming," he said. I almost didn't. I wouldn't have blamed you. We talked for 2 hours. He told me about his childhood, about the pressure to be perfect, about the first time he realized he was losing time and couldn't account for where he'd been. I told him about growing up with our mother, about becoming a climber, about the life he might have had if circumstances had been different. There was no instant connection, no magical twin bond. But there was something, a recognition maybe. A sense that we were both shaped by the same abandonment, just in different ways. "I'm working on a revenge plan," I said suddenly. I don't know why I told him this. Maybe because he was the only person who couldn't judge me for it. Against Sharon? Against the situation. Against the unfairness of it all. I want to do something that makes me feel like I have control again. Rudolph leaned forward. What kind of revenge? And this is where my story takes its final turn. For weeks, I'd been planning something that had nothing to do with money or violence. Something more subtle, more permanent. I wanted to write a book, a memoir about everything that had happened. About Sharon, about the fake affair, about discovering I had a twin brother with dissociative identity disorder. About the abortion, the lies, the pain. I wanted to expose every detail, every moment of humiliation I'd endured. Not for profit, but for catharsis. To take back my narrative. "That's your revenge?" Rudolph asked. "A book? Truth as revenge. The most powerful kind." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something I didn't expect. "Put my story in there too. The real one. About the disorder, about the personas, about what it's like to live in fragments. If you're going to expose Sharon, expose me too. Let people understand that mental illness doesn't excuse behavior, but it explains it. Maybe someone else out there is suffering the same way and doesn't know it. Maybe your book could help them." I hadn't expected that. Hadn't expected him to be willing to be vulnerable in such a public way. "You're sure?" "I'm sure. But on one condition." "What's that?" "You come visit me once a month while you're writing it. I'll tell you everything you need to know. In exchange, you teach me about our family. About our mother. About who I might have been." It was a deal I hadn't anticipated. But something about it felt right. Over the next 6 months, I visited Rudolph regularly. We sat in that common room, him telling me his story, me telling him ours. Slowly, something shifted. We weren't friends exactly. But we weren't strangers anymore either. I finished the book in early spring. Titled it Fractured, A Story of Identity, Betrayal, and Finding Family. Sent it to publishers. 3 were interested. 1 offered a contract. Sharon found out about the book when the announcement went public. She called me furious. "You're exploiting Rudolph's illness for profit." "I'm telling the truth." And Rudolph gave permission. "Check with him if you don't believe me." There was silence on the line. Then, "You know this will hurt me." "Yes." "And you're okay with that? Are you okay with what you did to me?" I shot back. Another silence. Then she hung up. The book released in August. It became a modest success, not a bestseller but enough to get attention. I did interviews, podcasts, a few local TV appearances. People reached out sharing their own stories of betrayal, of discovering family secrets, of dealing with mental illness. Rudolph's treatment facility used the book in their therapy programs. He graduated from the residential program and moved into outpatient care. Slowly, he was rebuilding his life, this time with full awareness of his condition and tools to manage it. Sharon continued her work as a bridge between Rudolph and our mother. Eventually, my mother flew to Colorado. She met Rudolph for the first time in 35 years. They both cried. I wasn't there, but Sharon sent me a photo. My mother, small and aged, hugging this tall man who had her eyes. My eyes. As for me, I stayed in Oklahoma City. Kept climbing mountains. Kept living in the house that once held a marriage. But it no longer felt empty. It felt like mine. The book money, modest as it was, I split 3 ways. 1/3 went to a foundation for mental health research. 1/3 went to Rudolph's continued treatment costs. The final third I kept, putting it toward a new climbing expedition to Denali. On the day I left for that expedition, I received a package. Inside was a photo of 3 people, my mother, Rudolph, and Sharon. They were standing in front of the treatment facility, smiling. On the back, in Rudolph's handwriting, "Thank you for telling our story. Thank you for giving me a chance to be whole. Your brother." I put the photo in my pack and headed to the mountain. Climbing Denali took 3 weeks. Every step, every frozen breath, every moment of pushing through exhaustion felt like shedding old skin. At the summit, I stood in the wind, looking out at the endless white landscape, and felt something I hadn't felt in over a year. Not forgiveness, I wasn't there yet, might never be. But acceptance. The understanding that life is messy and complicated and full of pain we don't choose. That people are broken and trying to heal. That family can hurt us and save us in the same breath. When I returned home, there was a message from Rudolph. He'd gotten engaged, to a woman named Claire he'd met in group therapy. She knew everything about his condition. She loved him anyway. The wedding invitation arrived a month later. I stared at it for days before making my decision. I went. Not for Sharon, who was there as a bridesmaid. Not for my mother, who cried through the ceremony. But for Rudolph. For the brother I never knew I had, who was trying to build a life from fragments. At the reception, Rudolph pulled me aside. "I never thanked you properly," he said. "For what?" "For not giving up on the truth. For being willing to see me as more than just the person who destroyed your marriage. For giving me a chance to be your brother." I looked at him, really looked at him. Saw my own features reflected back. Saw the vulnerability and hope in his eyes. "We're not close," I said honestly. "Maybe we never will be. I know. But we're family. And that means something." He smiled. "It means everything." I left the wedding early, drove back to Oklahoma through the night. Put on coffee when I got home, sat in my kitchen as the sun rose, and thought about everything that had led to this moment. Sharon had betrayed me. That was true. She'd lied, kept secrets, made choices that shattered our marriage. That was also true. But she'd also led me to discover a brother I never knew existed. She'd forced me to confront truths about myself, about my ability to forgive, about what really mattered in life. The revenge I'd sought, the book, the exposure, the public reckoning, had transformed into something else. Not redemption but evolution. I'd wanted to hurt her the way she hurt me. Instead, I told a story that helped people. That was better than revenge. That was healing. Months turned into years. Rudolph stayed in treatment, managing his condition with medication and therapy. He and Claire had a daughter. They named her Caroline after the first wife who disappeared, who, it turned out, hadn't disappeared at all but had moved to Australia and started a new life. She reached out after reading the book, wanting to clarify that Rudolph's personas had frightened her, but he'd never hurt her. She just needed to escape. Sharon eventually moved back to Oklahoma City but kept her distance from me. We'd see each other occasionally at family events, holidays with my mother, Rudolph's visits. We were civil, cordial even, but the intimacy was gone, replaced by the careful politeness of people who once loved each other and now simply coexisted. I started dating again, this time more carefully. Met a woman named Laura at a bookstore. She'd read my memoir. Knew the whole story before our first date. Chose to go out with me anyway. We took it slow. No rushing, no assumptions, no hidden agendas. Just 2 broken people trying to build something honest. 3 years after the divorce, I sold the house. It was time. Moved into a smaller place closer to the mountains, where I could see the peaks from my bedroom window every morning. On the day I handed over the keys to the new owners, I felt the last piece of my old life slip away. It didn't hurt the way I thought it would. Instead, it felt like freedom. The final chapter of this story isn't dramatic. There's no last big revelation, no shocking twist. Sometimes life is just about moving forward. About waking up each day and choosing to keep going. About finding meaning in unexpected places. I still climb mountains. Still write, working on a second book about resilience and healing. Still visit Rudolph once every few months, watching him parent his daughter, marveling at how far he's come. My mother is aging now, softer around the edges. She finally forgave herself for giving Rudolph up. Says meeting him again was the greatest gift of her final years. Sharon remains an enigma. I heard through family that she's in therapy herself, working through her own trauma. I hope she finds peace. I genuinely do. Because holding on to anger only poisoned me. Truth comes in the strangest ways. Sometimes as betrayal, sometimes as an old photo album, sometimes as forgiveness you didn't plan to give. Sometimes as a brother you never knew existed, whose illness taught you more about grace than any sermon ever could. I'm 40 now. 5 years since that day I found the messages on Sharon's phone. 5 years of climbing literal and metaphorical mountains. 5 years of learning that healing isn't linear, that family is complicated, that truth is sometimes uglier and more beautiful than fiction. People ask me if I regret writing the book. If I regret exposing Sharon, Rudolph, and myself to public scrutiny. The answer is no. The book wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. Taking back my story, my voice, my power. They ask if I've forgiven Sharon. The answer is complicated. I've let go of the anger, but forgiveness? That's a door I'm still deciding whether to open. They ask if Rudolph and I are close. The answer is we're brothers. Sometimes that means weekly phone calls. Sometimes it means months of silence. But it always means there's someone out there who shares my DNA, my history, my mother's eyes. And that matters. Last month, I stood at the summit of another peak. Not Denali this time, but a smaller mountain in Colorado near Rudolph's home. He'd asked if he could join me on a climb. His first ever. I said yes. We didn't talk much on the way up. Climbing takes breath, takes focus. But at the top, with the world spread out below us, he turned to me and said, "I'm glad I have a brother." I looked at him, this man who'd unknowingly destroyed my marriage, who'd taught me about mental illness and grace, who was trying so hard to be whole. "I'm glad too," I said. And I meant it. Not because our story had a fairy tale ending. Not because everything was fixed or perfect. But because sometimes the most profound truths come from the deepest pain. Because family isn't always who you're raised with. Sometimes it's who you find along the way. Because life doesn't give us the stories we want. It gives us the stories we need. And mine, messy, complicated, painful, and beautiful, taught me that peaks are meant to be climbed, truths are meant to be told, and brothers, even ones you never knew existed, are worth knowing. I still live in Oklahoma City. Still climb mountains. Still write. Still carry the scars of betrayal and the strange gift of discovery. Sharon is somewhere in the city too, living her life. Rudolph is in Colorado with his family. My mother is proud of both her sons. And me? I'm at peace with the chaos. Because in the end, that's all any of us can hope for. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. The screen now displays a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.